Hi, I'm Marty Duda.
And I'm Jemilah Hayes, and on this edition of the Uptown Lowdown, we check out new albums from Tom Speight, Malin, and Reb Fountain.
And we're going to find out how Blindspott were able to reunite after they had a really nasty breakup.
And then Oxford's going to join us to dissect a new film, Die In A Gunight.
And all that, and we're going to have a tribute to a sax-playing funk legend right here on this week's edition of the 13th Floor Uptown Lowdown.
All right, so first up, Marty's going to give a little tribute to Alfred Peewee Ellis, who died yesterday at age 80.
Yes, unfortunately, Peewee, I'm proud to say, was a friend of mine. We were both from Rochester, New York. Peewee had a few years on me, but amazing saxophone player, funk, jazz, R&B, rock and roll. He could play it all. He's best known as a member of James Brown's classic band. I think he joined in 1965 and left around 1969, 1970. He wrote he wrote "Cold Sweat," which is one of James Brown's great songs, and him and Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley were like the backbone of that band. And then they all ended up, most of them splitting off because James was a tough man to work for. So after Peewee left James, he went and recorded and worked for CTI Records, which is a jazz label. And he was kind of their in-house producer. And this is one of the records he did for them. Esther Phillips, From a Whisper to a Scream, fantastic record, recorded at Rudy Van Gelder's studio in New Jersey. And from there, he became I think, music director for Van Morrison in the late 70s. And he stayed with him for a few years. I think Van's another tough man to work for. And this is one of the albums that Peewee is on. So anyway, he ended up coming back to Rochester, New York, and that's where I met him. And a bunch of us musicians all started hanging out. I mean, I'm not a musician, but I was hanging out with him anyway. And then we had this idea that we were going to make a record. So since Peewee knew all of these guys from James Brown's band, he was able to connect us all together. So we made this record. It's called the King All-Stars. And King is the record label in Cincinnati that they were all signed to at some point. So James Brown, we had Hank Ballard, who wrote The Twist. We had Bill Doggett, who was this amazing keyboard player, had a big hit in the 50s called Honky Tonk. And we got them all together. They all arrived on one day, on a Friday. We hung out and went out to a club. It was amazing in this seedy part of town and just took it over for one night. And then we went into the studio, set up, and recorded the whole album in one day, mixed it live. Nobody does that, and it sounds amazing. So, and Peewee was integral to that thing. So I want to show you, we videotaped some of it, of course, and I'll show you a clip of Vicki Anderson, who was married to Bobby Bird, who was James Brown's right-hand man, and she sang in James Brown's band. Anyway, it's her singing This Is a Man's World, and Peewee Ellis kind of did the arrangement. You can see him conducting the band in this video. He's wearing the blue shirt. So this is Vicki Anderson, Man's World.
This is a man's world. This is a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl. Can I say that one more time? This is a man's world. This is a man's world. But it wouldn't be nothing without a woman or a girl.
All right, that was Vicki Anderson doing Man's World. That was Peewee Ellis, who just passed away a couple days ago, who was playing saxophone on that session and conducting the band. So I'm very sad to see him go. He was a good buddy.
Next up, we're going to look at some new albums out this week. First up is Tom Speight with Everything's Waiting for You, which he recorded at Abbey Road and RAK Studios, which is
big time. Big time. You can't go wrong.
You don't have
there.
to be a musician to know Abbey Road.
Right. Yep. He's an English singer-songwriter. I think he kind of in the same vein as like an Ed Sheeran kind of guy, popularity wise, and that kind of thing. But anyway,
yeah. And it sounds like he had an interesting experience with this album and the last album, because this album recorded in isolation, and the last album he actually recorded in 2019 when he had Crohn's disease, so in hospital.
Yep. So he's had some rough patches, but anyway, before we get into the rough patch and how he got out of it, let's listen to a little bit of the music so people can know what we're talking about. Here's a song called "Feel the Night" from the new album.
Feel the night
when you smile at me. Electricity is running through my bones, feels just like home. I don't feel so alone. I don't feel so anxious and weak. Give me what I need, send me above, tell me it's love. Anytime I look at you, anytime, come on, just feel the night. Just lie by my side.
So that's "Feel the Night" by Tom Speight, and he seems to have like written the whole album to make people smile and make people happy. And I guess, you know, being so introspective and writing those songs in that time of isolation, I can really see that want to spread joy and make other people happy.
Yep. And I think, well, I did do an interview with Tom, as I've spoken with everybody who's on the planet these days, and he was one of them. And you can just tell from talking to him, he's very enthusiastic. He had a really good experience after releasing the Collide album, where he went on this big worldwide tour and played in front. I guess he's big in Brazil, apparently. I don't know why. But anyway, so when I interviewed him, I asked him, I said, well, how did releasing Collide and touring and all that affect what we hear on the new record? So here's what he had to say.
Personally, I feel like I've got more confident and just maybe slightly a bit more ambitious because of the shows that we were playing. So like, for example, when we played Glastonbury, we had like a sold out tent and everyone was singing along. And it kind of, I suppose it kind of like set up a spark in me to maybe think, oh, we can play some, you know, some bigger rooms. We can, you know, the sounds, the sonic palette could get bigger. And I just say a bit more confident, really. I don't think I've changed too much as a person, you know, and I certainly love the same music as I loved on the first record. And I think if you're a fan of my music, you'll like this new album. But I think it's just, you know, I think every band artist needs to expand on each record. I'm hopefully doing that.
So that's Tom Speight talking about how the creation of his previous album Collide made him more confident with creating this one.
Yep. He's a happy camper.
And now we're on to Jesse Malin with his album Sad and Beautiful World. We should just jump right in with playing a quick snippet of a video, I think.
Exactly. This is a song called State of the Art.
Never in the state of the art. I'm trying not to take it to heart while everything is falling apart. I know you wanted more this time.
Okay, that was Jesse Malin. And I got to say, this is a personal favorite of mine because I've known about Jesse's music. He's a New York rocker. He was in a band called D Generation in the 90s that nobody paid any attention to. And kind of a punk rocky kind of thing. And then he went solo, and he had this album that came out around 2002, 2003 called The Fine Art of Self-Destruction. And that's kind of where he made his name. And I remember, I think he played at the King's Arms here around that time. And I was there and I was like, oh, this guy's, you know, rock and roll. Yay. So it's good. So I've been kind of following him around. The previous album to this one came out in 2019. And it was produced by Lucinda Williams. So that always is good as well. And he's got some friends. Lucinda's on the new album, which I think is just leftovers from the tracks that they made together on the previous album. But he's got like Tommy Stinson from The Replacements. Apparently he's buddies with Ryan Adams, and he's going to be on the record too, but I won't hold that against him. So just thrilled to pieces to see. I actually have listened to this album 3 times over the weekend, which is considering how busy I am. So, and he does a nice cover of a Tom Petty and Heartbreaker song called "Coming Back to You" or "Crawling Back to You" rather. So I would say, tell me what you thought of him first, because I know you know nothing about him.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really heard much from him until listening to this album, and I thought it was quite a interesting mix of like you say, rock stuff that he probably has done before that I haven't heard much of,
Right.
but with quite a country vocal. Like
Yep. Yep.
it's probably something to do with his accent and just the way that he pronounces his words. But
Yep.
I often find that those like in between genres are very interesting because it wasn't country music; it was just country.
Yep. It's all blurring together. I love that because
Yeah,
that wouldn't have happened 20 years ago, but now it's cool. So that's good.
I think in that way, it's cool and can sort of reach a lot of different people who might not have one genre being sort of their genre that they like. So yeah, I liked it. I thought it was cool.
So in summation, I would say Jesse Malin is the kind of artist, if you had to describe him, he sounds like Bruce Springsteen or Tom Petty if they never had a hit. So, you know what I mean? Just plugging along, making records, very hard on his sleeve kind of stuff. Very, you know, yeah. So it's my cup of tea. Okay, time now to talk about the movies. And our movie man, Oxford Lamoureaux, is with us to talk about a new movie that's opening this week called Die in a Gunfight. All right.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Oxford.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. So we got Die in a Gunfight, which on the surface is kind of a Romeo and Juliet type thing, updated, but that's being very unfair to it, I would say.
Being very unfair to Romeo and Juliet, absolutely.
To both.
Classics like that, he would be rolling in his grave if he heard you talking such trash, Marty.
I know.
There are moments. So obviously, it's strange, right? Okay. First off, I liked it. I like trashy, terrible films. I'm a fan. I love garbage. You know, that's the thing for me. But so it definitely has those homage, like, you know, copy paste moments of Romeo and Juliet.
Yep.
For those story beats. But I mean, for me, it felt like it felt more like an update on like the Frankenstein of every mid 2005 to mid, like, you know, early 2010s.
Right.
Kind of action, overly stylized kind of film.
For generations, the Gibbon and Rathcard families had a blood feud. It was never about business.
Your son is trespassing.
It was personal.
Mary Rathcard.
Ben Gibbon.
Do I need to explain to you why this is unacceptable? End it.
It was an instant scandal.
You take care of my problem, I'll grant you my daughter's hand.
Take care of him.
Looks like me and you gotta dance. How do you want to die? I want to die in a gunfight.
The choices they had made had led them to this very moment.
The fallout, it's not going to be pretty.
Now there's two star-crossed lovers, of course, in the middle of this, Ben and Mary. Ben is played by Diego Boneta, and Mary is Alexandra Daddario. Is that how she pronounces her name?
Daddario, I think.
She's kind of. They're both kind of a hot, up and coming. Well, not up and coming, but they're.
Well, yeah.
Kind
So
of,
she was. I saw her in a few things, but True Detective.
That's the one.
True Detective. I saw her. She's fantastic, but she's been she's brilliant in that.
Yeah.
But he was. So
yeah,
he
I've
was
seen
also
her in
Diego.
a couple of other series, like as the same sort of character. Like we kind of.
Right.
This is a bit mean, but she's stunning. But we saw this one like TV series that she's in. She played this like psycho killer character, and now it's like so hard not to just see her because her eyes are just so big and like scary. It's just so hard not to picture her as being this like freaky character.
And I think she's in something called The White Lotus at the moment. It's on the platforms, as it were. He was also Diego was also he was in Screen Queens. The star-crossed loversness of this, and this is the thing, this is the disconnect here, and this is why I loved it, but it's trash, is that, you know, the bit, so it has Billy Crudup. Almost, you know, amazing narrating. It has all this great talent, and you can tell. And so I was saying to Marty earlier, it's a script that's been in circulation since 2010. And it's got this touch of, so it's on this, you know, best unmade scripts kind of thing. I don't say it is true. It is a fantastic film, but it has that flavor of this overly stylized thing where all the information, everything we learned there that you just said, we get in this kind of other separate
takeaway jump out film, you know, which is basically like, hey, here's the intervention. It's exposition. Like it's exposition, like overload in your face.
Yes, there's a lot of exposition.
But I didn't. But
a lot
so
of
I
exposition and not really a lot of plot.
Well, and here's the thing is but so I didn't feel that they were star-crossed lovers. I thought that they were insane psychos. Both of them, both of them crazy. I was like, not even Romeo and Juliet crazy. Like these are like, watch out, put them in, institutionalize these people because this is crazy. And that kind of offbeat way would have worked like 10 years ago. But now we're too critical and we're too like, we pull it apart too much. And we're like, what? This is so terribly... You shouldn't, this is, so amoral, like, but all of it then. Yeah.
Nothing surprised me. Like there was, from the moment the movie began and I introduced, and we saw them in the, that party, I knew exactly what was going to happen. And exactly what I thought was going to happen is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, in that way, like, it felt like the intro was almost like a too in-depth trailer where it gives you like the backstory was.
Now I don't need to watch the movie.
It's like I was hoping, and what kept me watching it was the hope that there would be like a cliffhanger, you know, something that I wasn't expecting.
Well, there was a twist. I mean, the end of the movie, which we won't give away, but they kind of cheated on that too, because they were like, "Oh dear, well."
Well, I know what you mean, but I think that resonates exactly what you've just said with the point that I was just going at before, is that, you know, we've seen it all before. This was super fresh 10 years ago. It was very like enjoyable, visually enjoyable, like trash, which for me is like, that's perfect. Like date movie, I guess, like a great also litmus test. If you take a person to this movie and they're like, I identify with these characters, you can be like, see you later, goodbye, okay, and, you know, walk home. That is, I'm gonna wake up with a knife in my back or die in a gunfight on the way home.
Yeah. Now I love the fact. I like the fact that Jemilah mentioned the way that Alexandra looks, because to me that was part of the appeal. Not that she's attractive; she is definitely attractive. She reminded me of Lana Del Rey. The same appeal. She's got that kind of generic, beautiful, whatever, but blank. She's like
with this like she's got like scary eyes, you know.
She's got a porcelain. She's got a doll like expression. And that very like exaggerated anime way.
When she's placed into these characters that I have seen her in multiple times as these like. You don't like not heaps of character development, so you're presented with this character and you kind of know who they are, and they kind of are presented to be a little bit shady, you know, like they're not perfect human beings, you know. She might stab you in the back, and when you know that, it's like you can see it in her eyes, and every moment where she doesn't really talk a lot is just like you're waiting for her to do something. And I think it works really well in the context of this movie because that's the character that she plays.
But the other character that reminded me of a rock and roller was Terrence, the guy who was Mary's protector / stalker. I think he's played by Justin Chapman. He reminded me of Billy Joe Armstrong from Green Day.
So I thought he was hilarious. Like there's the scene where he pulls out the ring and it's like, so let's not joke about sexual assault, but like he's going from like trying to have sex with her on a couch and being really creepy to suddenly like flinging around and pulling out this ring in a way that, again, now you see that as that's the way your brain sees it. But 10 years ago, you'd be like, oh, you know, you have less of not an outrage meter, but you have less of like a.
So you're saying it was ahead of its
kind of
time.
things. Well, I mean, I think the script, I don't know why, I couldn't say, obviously, I'd have to see it how it was 10 years ago. But I mean, like I said, I enjoyed it. And this is the kind of thing that is, in a way, you know, the predictability of it.
I enjoyed it as well. And I love the look as well. Everything was lit beautifully. It was all in red and greens.
And that's the over stylized kind of visual aspect of it, which makes it a joy to watch. You know, you watch it with your mates and it's a pleasure. It's easy watching.
Let's let Jemilah have the last word on it. Would you watch it again?
I probably wouldn't watch it again. And to be honest, like.
Would you recommend it?
I would not recommend it to children. That's for sure. Definitely don't make this a childhood film, regardless.
I like what you said. Oxford is very true. Like I do like trashy movies where it's just easy to watch and you can just sit back and you don't really have to pay a lot of attention. But I personally think that I've seen other trashy movies that keep me engaged more.
Exactly. Yeah, if you like kind of stylistically, quick, snappy, kind of somewhat offbeat films, a little bit of action that are somewhat predictable, but kind of cool as well. Totally go see it. It's a nice, funny, easy film, but definitely like it's probably going to be, here's the thing, it's a guilty pleasure movie, and everyone's guilty pleasure movies are different. So like in a way it's creeping in there for me. I might give it another try in a couple of years and see if it really hits the spot again. But I mean, it's there are, like you said, there are better things that you could return to. But yeah, I'd give it another 90 minutes of my time.
All right,
giggle.
All right, well, let's wrap this segment up. Thank you, Oxford, stopping by and giving us your insights.
Thanks,
Lovely,
Oxford.
can't wait. Wonderful to talk to you guys. I'll catch you next week.
You will. Bye bye.
Yeah, see you soon. See ya. All right, into our new single of the week. This week it's from Lime Cordial, and it's a song called Apple Crumble. Let's just check out a little bit of the video.
You know I love it special and I love it when it's 2 for 1. Wait, now the next thing you know, they're both taking off clothes and their shoes are love toes and I'm up to my neck. I follow my nose, I don't know where it goes, but if you wanna flow, we can fly. I'm in trouble now. I'm seeing double now. Apple crumble.
That's a little snippet of Apple Crumble by Lime Cordial. I thought that it was kind of unexpectedly funk from a lot of their music that I've heard before.
Yeah.
I really liked that. I think that like
They had a groove.
Yeah, I've always quite liked Lime Cordial. They're kind of in the same realm as like Soaked Oats, Marco Road. And sometimes I find that as much as I really enjoy all those bands, they all kind of blend into this like Sticky Fingers-esque bowl. And I liked that they kind of stepped out of this very, very, very indie sound that they've been doing and kind of, it was a little bit funky. It had a groove, it had a rhythm. Apple Crumble is a funny name. I love songs with like random names that are
I just like Apple Crumble.
Yeah, who doesn't like Apple Crumble? And it sounds tasty, and I think
exactly.
It's a tasty song.
So apparently
so
this song is going to be part of a mini album that's coming out called Cordy Elba, which I don't know what that means, but that's coming out soon. And they were supposed to be here in New Zealand, I think like now, but they had to obviously postpone the tour. So they're going to be here in November, and I think they have a couple dates at the Power Station. So we'll have to catch that.
Hopefully we'll be able to see them.
Oh, let's hope so. All right. So new single of the week, Lime Cordial. Okay, now it's time for my interview of the week. Again, I've been talking to everybody, but the guy this week is Damien Alexander, who's the lead vocalist for Blindspott. Now, Blindspott were huge in the early part of this century. They're a New Zealand band. They put out 2 albums, and they both went to #1, which had never been done by, I don't think, a New Zealand band in New Zealand. So kind of groundbreaking in that. And then, of course, they promptly broke up, which is so they're their own worst enemies. And then they had all sorts of, people were suing each other. They tried to regroup, and one of the guys, they couldn't use their name. It was awful. And you just know when it gets to be lawsuits in there, it's getting ugly, right? So now they're reunited. They have a new song that just came out called R.I.P. Rest in Pieces, I believe is. So we'll play a little bit of that, then we'll come back and we'll do the interview bit.
Time
Okay, that was R.I.P. from Blindspott, new music from them. You're loving it, right?
It's my favorite genre of music, but for the genre that it's part of, it's great.
Yeah, they sound pretty good. I mean, they definitely haven't mellowed out. So anyway, I talked to Damien, and I was wondering what it was going to be like, because is he going to want to talk about all this stuff that happened, or he's going to be all positive and pretend it didn't happen? But he was very forthcoming. But the question that I had to ask him was, how can, after all the stuff that they went through, how did he manage to reunite and make music again after all that stuff? So let's hear what he has to say.
You know, for us, like, there was, you know, there was probably, like, I think like 9 years or something, or there's quite a while that went up, maybe not 9 years, but there's quite a few years that went by where the relationship between the band wasn't great.
Right.
You know, the ex-members and Shelton and me and Marcus and stuff. And, you know, I kind of, a few years ago, reached out to Shelton because personally didn't want to carry the weight of the negativity around what had happened to our friendship. And I reached out to him and, you know, and said, look, hey, you know, we should catch up for a beer. We can have a punch up. We can do whatever. You know, like, yeah, let's just get this sorted. So we got together and caught up, and before you know it, it was 2:00 in the morning, and we're like stumbling around Auckland City.
Good idea.
I mean, drunk.
I do know what you mean.
And that became the start of what is now, you know, I guess what you'd call a reunion. You know, we mended some bridges. We talked about some of the trauma and some of the shit that had happened over the years, and kind of buried that. And and then we started doing some shows a couple of years ago. We decided to go back out and start performing again as Blindspott. And the energy in that was undeniable. You know, like,
right.
There's something that there's this kind of weird moment when me, Marcus, and Shelton are together in an environment, either performing or writing music, which is kind of, I guess, we go right back to, you know, 2001, you know,
right.
2000, and it's weird. It's like a time machine. So yeah, all this energy, all the energy built up, and we ended up deciding, you know, we always said that we would test the waters with some shows, see what the energy was like, see what it felt like, and then if it felt right, have the discussion and then start writing again, you know. And it felt right. We had the discussion, and here we are now.
All right, so that was Damien Alexander from Blindspott talking about how they got back together after what sounds like a big mess of them breaking up after
it was a mess, that's for sure.
Yeah, and they're performing at Spark Arena on November the 26th with Dave Dobbin, which is for the Rock Big 30 show.
Yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of bands on that list, but who knows? It should be.
I always just find Dave Dobbin plays with the randomest. He's like genreless, you know. He just plays with everybody and everything. It's amazing.
Exactly. Well, good old Dave. It'll be good to see him back on stage. Well, let's take a break now, and then we'll come back and do the rest of the Uptown Lowdown. All right, time to now look at a couple of new albums that we're looking forward to that are coming out on October 1st. The first one is a band called Strand of Oaks. The album is called In Heaven, and it's not really a band. It's a guy named Timothy Showalter, who is now based in Austin, Texas, but he has a new song that's coming out on the album that we'll play for you right now called Somewhere in Chicago.
Where you gonna hide when the mist is gone? Take it out back and use it in a song. Screaming in a pillow as she can. Drop it in the water and I still miss you. The master calls back again. The master calls back again.
So that's Strand of Oaks. The song is Somewhere in Chicago. It's a tribute to John Prine, who passed away last year. I think it was a COVID-related death, but fortunately before he left us, he did come to New Zealand and play the year before, so we're all very happy about that. So the other big album that's coming out on Friday is Reb Fountain's Iris. Looking forward to that. You know, I'm a big fan. What about you? You looking forward to it?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I think I can never match my excitement to yours, Marty, so I know you're probably a bigger fan. But I know lots of people who know and love Reb Fountain, and especially here in New Zealand, so I'm sure that her album will be really well received.
Right. So both of us have listened to the album in advance. And she's definitely taken a change of direction on the previous record. And I think it sounds to me like she's kind of on a similar vein on this one. What did it sound like to you? Did you have an opinion about it?
It felt really natural for me. And I think it felt like it came from her heart, and it felt like it was sort of crafted. It's hard to describe, but crafted sequentially, like from the bottom up. It didn't really feel like she had tried too hard in a good way, you know. It felt like she was just sharing her experience and her thoughts rather than sort of meticulously placing things. And I think that that's quite true to Reb Fountain as an artist, and I think that that's kind of how she represents herself. So
all right, well, let's give it a listen to one. There's been a few singles that have been out before the album. One of them is called Fox Bright, so here it is.
I'm facing the wall, shaking the line, and love lost is worse than the night. Reflections of fright and the light, spark tinder and flint burn daylight.
Okay, so that was new music from Reb Fountain. The new album is out on Friday. It's called Iris. I'm all excited. We'll be talking to her sometime this week to get the behind-the-scenes scoop on the record, so be sure to catch the 13th Floor for that. So, yeah, the new music just keeps on coming. I love it. Yep,
Thank God.
Well, I think we're probably going to have at least one more Zoom version of the show before lockdown ends, so we'll just have to be happy with it.
Pull up while we can, people talk a lot about how, like, last time there was a lockdown, afterwards everyone released music. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another round of like a lockdown album, you know, where people had all this time to create stuff and just more stuff out in the world, which is all exciting.
May have to make an hour-long version of the show. No. All right. Well, hang in there. Stay cool and stay healthy, and I'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, you too.
All right.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye.
Just like Donnie Darko, gotta die to dream. Will I make it to tomorrow? Are you here with me? Heart so fast, it's just one beat. Mind so lost, it's a one-way street. Used to be good, running free. Well, you can catch me.
The 13th Floor Uptown Lowdown is brought to you in part by a grant from the New Zealand Music Commission and by the Uptown Business Association.